Hey guys, this is ADWCTA. Welcome to the 12th episode part of the Whispers of the Old God Arena Meta Analysis. We're on our last class. It is Priest, and so far I have been hinting a lot about how bad Priest is going to be, but not worse than Hunter, and that's what we'll look at right now. Let's just start with the basics, right? Priest was coming into Whispers of the Old Gods pretty much the consensus worst class, right? Like, even for Hunter, you have players like Shady Bunny who are doing like incredibly well with Hunter. And for Priest, even if the average like really good player in the arena does about as well with Priest as with Hunter, maybe even a little better, there's no one who's hanging out and being like, yeah, Priestess plays this way and it is so good this way. No one like stands up for the Priest. And that's because Priest is by far the class most dependent on how things go that are outside of your control. It's not exactly like the RNG of the Shaman hitting the hero power, it's just, are you on the board? Like, clearly you're trying to get on the board. Everyone knows that, especially if you're playing the Priest, but, if you get on the board, that's really good. If you don't get on the board, there's not much you can do, it's very bad. So it's hard to mess up playing as the Priest. That's not to say you can, that's not to say, like, good players aren't better with the Priest than worse players, but your skill differential is really a lot smaller with the Priest than any other class, including Paladin. Like, we talk shit about the Paladin a lot, but Priest is worse in that regard. So Priest was kind of in trouble, and even among, I think, like, average players, it was just kind of a underpowered class. There's a lot of things that you can do that get a lot of value, but if you don't get on the board, you're just dead anyway. So that's where we were, and now we're getting rid of Entomb and Museum Curator. Neither of those two cards like help the Priest actually get the board, but they were at least powerful cards, right? That made it like even more of a near certainty that if you get to the late game and the Priest isn't dead, and either you run out of cards or you just keep not hitting their face, the Priest will eventually outvalue you. So to replace those cards, let's look at what new cards happen. What new cards do the Priest get to replace two fairly good cards? And do these new cards help you get the board, right? Do they help you get tempo? Start with the commons. Hooded Acolyte is our first card. It is a Athiuen card, which, as we know by this point, means the next two cards get offered a ridiculous amount of times. So, what are we going to base our Whispers of the Old God Priest on? First up, Future ADWCTA here. I misread Darkshire Alchemist the first time. I thought it just restored 5 health to your face. But it's actually a 5 mana 4/5 that restores health to any minion. So it's like a Earthen Ring Farseer. It restores a little more health, which could be useful. And more importantly, it has a 4/5 stat line, which is way better than a 3/3 stat line. So yes, it is coming out a little bit later, but you see how good Darkscale Healer is, right? And that only heals 2. So being able to heal later on in the game with a decent sized body is really good. And so Darkshire Alchemist is going to be definitely a good card on that like Yeti-ish level, like maybe a little below a Yeti. So this is definitely a good card, but again, it's not amazing. Where Yeti has gone down so much in value, like I feel like Yeti goes down by like 2 points or 4 points every time an expansion comes out. Just because there's more fancy stuff you can do and more combos you can pull off in the arena and more ways to like get tempo and whatever. And so this is a good card. This is a good card. What's the next one, right? We have one more card that will show up some like twice the amount that other Priest cards will. And it is Power Word Tentacles, which is a 5 mana card again. Not a good start. And then it gives a minion +2/+6. Which is the stat distribution of a Blessing of, which is the number of stats that a Blessing of King gives for 4 mana, and is structured in a way that's not even necessarily better. And it costs 5 mana. And it's in a class that has a harder time to get the board in the first place. And just because you're giving it 6 health doesn't make it all that much easier to heal. Your hero power will always still heal to only 2 health. So this is a pretty bad card. Like, I don't know if anyone's sitting there being like, oh my god, Power Word Tentacles, but no. No, not Power Word Tentacle. This is like a really bad card. We're definitely below average. I would take a 2-drop any day over this card by a fair margin. So you're gonna see this card a lot, at least in your offerings. In reality, you're never gonna see this card because it's not gonna get picked, and because you're never gonna see Priest, especially if you win a lot, because Priest won't. Okay, maybe not all is lost. Let's move on to the rare cards. Starting with Twilight Darkmender, which is a Cthulhu card. So, all right, now the rare priest cards are going to show up as often as common priest cards, like non-Whispers of the Old God common priest cards, because of this Cthulhu card. So that's good. What are we adding? What, like, basically common priest cards are we adding? 1. Shifting Shade, 4 mana, 4/3. Copy a card from your opponent's deck and add it to your hand. Basically, Death Rattle, draw a card. 4/3 is pretty good. You have your Polluted Loot Hoarder, which we all thought was pretty good to begin with. Like that's a card definitely in the high 60s. Now you get an extra health on it. Does the extra health matter? It could matter, right? Having more attack than health always makes the health matter less, but it's still like 2 to 3 is a pretty big jump. It dodges Consecration, it dodges 2 3s, it dodges potentially like 2 5s or whatever, right? Like it dodges a bunch of things. It's definitely worth it, and you're starting at a pretty high base, so Shifting Shade is going to be a very good card. Kind of same problem though, right? It doesn't help you get the board. It gets you a card advantage. You were going to win if you get to the late game anyway. This is not really helping things. And then you have Shadow Word Horror for your other rare card. This is actually a good card. Out of all of these cards, I would feel the safest to say Shadow Word Horror is an actual card that will help the priest. Not just it has high value, but that you can take it, you can play it, and it will have effects. Why? Because 1, it helps priests get rid of something that they couldn't deal with before, right? You needed a Holy Nova or an Excavated Evil. Otherwise, it couldn't deal with tokens. This deals with tokens, and it deals with 2 3s, which your opponents will want to play over 3 2s because they're still dodging shadow. Like, if you're in your opponent's head, they're still dodging the possibility of a Holy Nova more than they're dodging the possibility of a Shadow Word Horror or an Excavated Evil, because these are rare cards. But little do they know, Shadow Word Horror is actually going to appear as often as Holy Nova in terms of being offered to draft. Now, Holy Nova is of course better, but Shadow Word Horror is still a really good card for that reason. It costs 1 less mana, and you get rid of a lot more things. You don't get rid of things where if your opponent eats one of your minions and it has a very low health left, but it does get rid of potentially very big cards with very low damage. And there's going to be quite a number of these coming out in Whispers of the Old Gods. So is it as good as Holy Nova? Not by a long shot. But it's a board clear. Priests need board clears, so this is a way to help you get back into the game. And it prevents people from overrunning you, right? It fills in a weak spot for the priest, where the priest should never have had that weak spot. We talk about classes converging and classes and how weaknesses are important for classes. Priests were always supposed to be able to do board clears. They were just not given those cards for the arena because their board clear was Auchenai Circle, right? Which is a combo, and that's fine in constructive. You can just put those cards in your deck. But in the arena, priests never had that. And that really hurt priests. So they just relied on Holy Nova. And then we got Excavated Evil, which was a bit better. Light Bomb is very, low offering rates. Now we get Shadow Word Horror. This is a good thing. This helps the priest maintain a more control playstyle that is more consistent. Look at the epic cards. Embrace the Shadows. I'm not even going to talk about it. It's an awful card. If you can't tell why it's an awful card, I don't know what to say. Forbidden Shaping, on the other hand, back to all the Forbidden cards. This, again, is a great Forbidden card. You summon a random minion, which is kind of weird. You don't really want to summon a random minion, but it's fine. Right? The flexibility and the fact that it basically is a drop allows you to feel pretty good about having this card no matter when it is. And you can always wait until turn 10, right? Or like turn 8 and use it, or turn 10 and use your hero power and then use it and get like a really good minion. So Forbidden Shaping is a ridiculously good card, but unfortunately it's an epic. And unfortunately, Embrace the Shadow exists instead of being a Cthulhu card, right? If that was a Cthulhu card, Forbidden Shaping would be offered more than twice as much as it currently will be. So, at the end of all this, we're looking at the Priest, and I mean, you shouldn't be too impressed by it. They don't really have a great card in here. They have a bunch of like goodish cards, and these are going to get offered a lot. And the fact that they're getting offered a lot is actually not a good thing because your other cards are getting diluted from it, right? Like your actual good priest cards, like Shadow Word Pain, Shadow Word Death, Norshard Cleric. I don't know, like the good priest cards, Valen's Chosen instead of this Power Word Tentacles crap. Like they're going to be offered less compared to LOE, just because you're adding more cards into the card pool. So overall power of priest class cards is actually going to go down, and its ability to help you like get on the board is, I wouldn't say it's going to go down, but it certainly didn't go up. Only because priest never had cards that helped you get the board. It had just Shrinkmeister and Dark Cultist. And then maybe Valen's Chosen, but you kind of had to already sort of be on the board for that to work. So it did get a little worse at holding the board. It got one more way to come back onto the board, and then it got some value cards from like the healing perspective and the drawing cards perspective. It's not a good trade-off. I wouldn't make the trade-off. And you lose Entomb and Museum Curator on the value front too. So if you just look at this, you would be very justified in thinking, wow, Priest is going to get a lot worse. It looks pretty much like a close and shut case. But Priest actually is not going to get all that much worse. I think Priest is actually going to be okay in the Whispers of the Old God meta. Hunter is going to get pretty bad. That's why we covered it first, and that's why we gave it a 1, and that's why it's going to, like, we outlined that. We're not going back there. Priest is not anywhere near in as dire of a straits. And it's not in that dire of a straits because of how this meta is going to change. Priests, like Warrior, are some of the classes that really, like, it really matters what the meta is. If you get a meta very favorable to Priests, where they can just stick on the board, then they're near unbeatable. If you get a meta where everything is tempo and Priests cannot get a foothold, it doesn't matter what powerful value cards you give them. They're not going to win. So the fact that the meta is slowing helps a lot. The fact that most of the new cards, like we covered before, right? Like all except 4 of the neutral cards are higher health than they are attack. That's very good, because if everybody plays cards with more attack than with more health than attack, then you can't remove your opponent's minions off the board on the same turn. You need to hit it twice to remove it off the minions, which means Priests have cards on the board that they can heal, that they can buff, that crazy things can happen with, right? On top of that, taunts save health, which is also very good, right? We talk about the Priest being able to win the late game. Well, one of the ways you beat the Priest is, especially as a hunter, right? You just go so fast and deal so much face damage that the Priest can't afford to heal its own face because it loses too much tempo, and they can't afford to just like drop big minions out and like take over the board because they're dead by then, because their minions don't taunt. But now if you have some taunts, that definitely helps on that front. Whereas your opponent's taunt don't matter all that much, right? Because you're trying to clear their minions anyway. You're not trying to hit their face. One more thing that really helps Priests is that there's going to be a bunch of huge minions coming out, right? You see the huge minion from the Shaman. You see huge minions in the neutral set. It's going to be a lot of big minions, and that's good. Why? Shadow or Death, right? Requires a high attack minion. Mind Control. You can make their big minions yours. All this stuff is good. In fact, when you get to turn 9, you're like very hesitant about ever playing a big minion. Like a lot of people, and it's correct a lot of times too, especially if you're up on the board, you just like hold the minion back. So you just anti-tempo yourself to avoid the Priest potentially mind controlling your big minion. And that's going to be an even bigger problem, right? The game slows down, you get to heal more stuff, your opponent is shifty about dropping big minions even though they have them. Like all this is very good to the Priest. And even more, even better, this is some stuff that will even shift everything more to the Priest side. Think about the number of minions with 4 attack. There's a lot of minions in Hearthstone with 4 attack. It's one of the most popular attack numbers in all of Hearthstone when it comes to minions. Now think of the Whispers of the Old God set. Here is the full list of minions that are like below average or above that have 4 attack. Polluted Hoarder, which you would never want to Shadow Word anyway because it draws a card when it dies. It's an anti-tempo card to begin with. And it has low health, so anything you have will kill it and hit it, or like a Holy Smite for that matter will kill it. Holy Nova, right? You have different ways to take care of it. Nerubian Prophet, fine. Nerubian Prophet's a good card. It'll come out later. It'll be a 4/4. It'll be hard to deal with. Master of Evolution. It's basically a Yeti that does more stuff. Fine, it's a Shaman. Shamans get a lot of good stuff. Southsea Squid-Faced, a rogue card, 4/4. Not that easy to deal with. Forlorn Stalker, Hunter card, and it's a 3-drop, and it only has 2 health. You don't really care too much about it. That's it. No other 4/4s. No 4/5s. No 4/6s. No 4/7s. None of that. Not even like 3 mana 4/3s. Like, this is a really good set for Priest to come into. Because those cards, all the things in the set, get an additional offering bonus. You'll just see them more often. And the old cards have all been diluted. So your Shadow Words are going to get more powerful. And especially Shadow Word Pain. Look at the new Shadow Word Pain targets. Aberrant Berserker, which is a good card, is going to get Shadow Word Pained. Even worse, Psychotron is an insanely good card. I mean, it's not an insanely good card, but it's like a card that's a neutral card that's going to be drafted by all classes pretty highly. That's going to get Shadow Word Pained. That's essentially better than even a 3/6. How often do you get to Shadow Word Pain something better than a 3/6? It's going to happen kind of often now. And if you're facing a warrior, Bloodhoof Brave, of course. So you are getting some pretty good Shadow Word targets on your core kind of neutral common set. All of this added together, I cannot stress enough how much, just like if your opponent plays a 3/6 and you play a 3/6, your opponent hits your guy once, drops another minion, you can heal your 4/6 or your 3/6 or whatever, hit back into the original guy, get a card, still keep your board presence, not lose any tempo, and then drop whatever it is minion you want to drop. That's insane. Priest gets the board, Priest stays on the board, Priest hero power has a use. You can start healing it and drawing cards in the Northshire Cleric. You can use your actual heal spells to heal it to get even more tempo. You can do so many things, right? So the fact that that kind of board situation is going to happen much more often now than the previous meta is going to make such a big difference with Priest. Priest is at the mercy of the meta. And with the Whispers of the Old God meta, the meta is very merciful to the Priest. So, up until you actually look at the Whispers of the Old God meta, just looking at the card quality, Priest is not doing well at all. Priest is doing pretty poorly. But once you take into account the overall meta and what's happening, you can see very clearly that whereas Hunter was in kind of the same spot, like actually Hunter already started off in a worse spot than Priest, but then Hunter got into an even worse spot, whereas Priest kind of mitigated all of their issues and came out fairly ahead. So, final rank for the Priest, 5.5 out of 10. It's not great. I'm not going to convince you Priest is great, but it's okay. It's fine. There is no hashtag Arena Priest matter. It's going to do okay. Is it going to be better than where it was before? Like, it was the worst class, right? So now Hunter may be the worst class. Is it any better than the second worst class? No, because the third worst class was Shaman, and they got ridiculous cards. Warlock's doing fine. Warrior got even better. Druid got worse, but Druid was so far ahead, it's not going to come close to a Priest now, I don't think. It could. It's hard to tell how far the Druid's going to fall. But, hey, Priest is still going to be okay. It's not going to be like, oh yeah, Priest and Hunter, those are the crappy classes. It's going to be, oh yeah, Hunter, that's the worst class. Priest is like the worst of a bunch of classes that are not so good. And we'll go very deep into how the classes interact with each other and more about the meta of the Whispers of the Old God in the final segment coming up next, which is like final words. But that's it for me for today. You can tell I did a bunch of these card reviews today. And this one, once again, is not going to be under 15 minutes. I think I got one under 15 minutes earlier. I hope I did. If not, this final video after this is going to be 15 minutes. I promise you. But yeah. So you saw all this. Like, every single class got more than 5 points out of 10, except Druid, which got 3, and Hunter that got 1. And so there may be a case for Arena Hunters matter, especially if, definitely after one more expansion, if Hunters still don't get the good cards. But I think we have a very clear new loser now in the arena, and it is not Priest. It is Hunter. That's it for me. Patreons are over here. Thanks for feeding the goat. Thank you guys so much for supporting me and Merps and the Grinning Goat and everything that we do. We hope this has been as exciting for you guys to watch as it is for me to make. I have so much more respect now for the people who make these types of videos, like on a daily basis. because this took a long time, and that's just on my part. And I don't even edit my own videos. So Created, huge thanks to Created for actually like editing all these videos and making it fancy and taking the time to do that. Well, we'll see. There's one more video left, and we'll go over some final thoughts before we bring you into the Whispers of the Old God meta. If you have any comments, put them here. Put them in any of the videos. I'm going to be looking through this all weekend, all of the first week of the Whispers of the Old Gods, and we'll get to you. We'll get to pretty much every question you ask, and we'll discuss things, because this is exciting. This is an exciting time to be in the arena meta. I was so scared. I was so scared when Blizzard was revealing all these cards, and they like didn't really affect the arena all that much. But now looking at this set as a whole, it is not going to be a reiteration of Classic. It is going to be moving things in a new direction. And so we'll talk a bit more about that in the next video. Thank you guys for watching, and see you next time.